Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Zach Townsend. We are in Coffeyville, Kansas, so straight south of Kansas City, a couple of hours here. We are a retail input supplier to local area producers. Mainly our scope of business is we are a Pioneer hybrid seed dealership, number one, and then we do some crop protection input sales as well. And then our final, like I like to say, our third leg of our business is we're precision planting and a short line equipment dealership, offer a couple different lines of business to kind of regional customers across the state into Missouri and into Oklahoma as well. So kind of branch out farther than the immediate local area for us.
Hi, Kevin Hike is co-founder of Intent. We're starting our 8th year of business. We're an insights and technology company, but a lot of people would know us as started off as a field trials organization. Kind of getting there, my background's always been in ag and technology and startups, so kind of goes back to the late 90s. Anyone in the room remember Vantage Point? The old school folks? Back in the late 90s at Vantage Point, basically DTN had those boxes that had news, weather, and information, and there was this thing called the internet coming online. And I think that my career has always been, it seems like a lot of luck in terms of timing, but I came out of school right at the time that the internet was coming online and had the chance to go be part of farms.com and see the internet revolution spin up and then spin down. And you start to see a lot of themes and trends. One of the things that had the chance to go build a startup called Farms Technology, where we connected grain merchandisers and farmers. And what I learned is when you sit in a room and you have high-speed internet and air conditioning and you invent ideas, it all works really well until you take it to the farm. And as we went from building that grain trading business that ultimately DuPont Pioneer acquired and spent about 10 years doing that, one, innovation and technology adoption, for me, it seems like it's taken twice as long and cost twice as much as you would anticipate. And as we rolled into Intent and started, and we talk about field trials, that's what we started to learn, is that companies have great ideas. We're going to talk about innovation today a lot. But until you get that on the farm and until you really let the farmers test it, try it, we've heard about that in several of the conversations, you don't really know if it's going to be adopted, and a lot of times it doesn't get adopted the way that you expect it to be. So Intent facilitated, started off in field trials. We built a data platform that connects farmers to the innovators, the businesses, and really just carrying farmers through these trials, these programs, and making sure that data is collected. I used to think it was really easy until you start doing this, and it's a lot of work for farmers. I did want to make one plug. Someone made the comment on the last panel, I think it was Bill, that said, why don't you pay us? Maybe it was Sarah that said, why don't you pay us for this? And that's what we do, is we actually pay farmers to run trials because it does take a lot of time and energy.
My name is Phil Goody. I work for Crown Power and Equipment. We're a Case IH dealer through mid-Missouri. Basically run from Missouri River all the way to the Arkansas line. Have 11 dealerships. I'm a branch manager, so my day-to-day is to take care of producers and find solutions for what they have going on. Breakdowns, any questions, technology, also trying to find advancements that will work for the people in my market area, coordinating with Case IH and trying to push technology out as much as we can. But basically day to day dealing with producers. Agriculture is a way of my life. I started in production ag whenever I was a kid. My dad went to town to work at a grain dealer, and I realized that I wasn't going to be a production guy, so I went into sales. I figured out I could sell a lot better than I could raise the crop. So and it turned into it's more of a service than it is a sales position. I mean, we do try and sell, but I take more joy out of helping people every day solve problems. We're a resource for knowledge, I guess is the best way to put it. Our first and foremost reason we are even in existence is because a producer has a need and they don't know where to go fill that need. So we try and really build a relationship of being that phone call and to give them a source or a product that would help fix the problem they have. So whether it's a tractor, whether it's technology, whether it's a setting on their combine through our service departments and our AFS, So I think we're more of an area or a person that's there for a resource, one-stop shop information source.
When I think about farmers, I go back to 2017 and how we launched the business. We had a project in which we were going to carry 25 farmers through. We were going to collect planting, application, and harvest data. And there were three options. We were doing this experimental trial. The options were we could charge the farmer, we could run it for free, or we could pay the farmer. Well, what we knew is that we weren't going to be able to charge the farmer for something they didn't know that it worked. That probably wasn't going to work. But what everyone kept telling us is dealers and companies kept bringing out these free trials, free products. And people were treating free as free. And if they got to it, great. And the industry was broken from that standpoint. So what we opted to do is, as we said, we're going to actually pay farmers to run these protocols and do these steps. Just to guess, if you were going to collect planting, application, harvest data, how many times do you think we had to talk to farmers throughout the season to collect those three data sets? Any guesses? 10? It averaged about 30 because data files would come in and people talk about this all the time. Just go collect the data. And that's when we started to realize how challenging this was and why it was hard for farmers and why it was challenging for us. So when I think about farmers, the value that we create is, it's not the dollars. I mean, really, we started the business and there were 25 farmers and we said, they're like, this is crazy, no one's ever paid us to do this, but these things are a lot of work, that's great. The reason they value our service is because the different innovators, the companies, the multinationals come to us, and at the end of the year, the farmers get a report that says, this is how well the product worked, treated versus untreated. They get a digital report with all of my data wrapped up in it, and it says, this is where it worked, this is where it worked on different soil types. That's what they're looking for. Someone mentioned on the first panel, they said the companies, I think Dallas might have mentioned it, the companies are doing it themselves. But there's something about when a company does a research project or shows the data to farmers, it's not necessarily independently validated. So us being neutral, us helping the farmers upload the data, and then us creating the individual reports, and then building a technology system so that we help the farmers throughout the year do the separate steps that are needed is how we have been successful. Obviously, there's a big value for companies at the end of that. But that's how we work with farmers and why they find value, what they tell us they find value in our service.
Yeah, so to echo off both what these gentlemen both said was, I look at our sales tactics and how we run our business, how we developed our business as sales through, education, sales through agronomy, not necessarily, hey, this product, put 10 bushels on this one, you need to buy it, but, here's why, here's where it fits, here's where it places. It's a local source of knowledge. You look back 10, 15, 20 years ago, across the state, Extension had a very large portion, pivotal role in that movement of they were the local source of knowledge. They were the unbiased test. They would conduct a test, compile it. Producers could go to those guys and learn. And then as the technology developed and the internet came online, people started looking elsewhere for that technology and that source. Extension is still relevant and they still do a great job, but it's kind of died off at a local level. So producers are still looking for, we need what works. Well, when we're dealing with 60, 70 customers, we see a lot of different things. So not only do we know what works, but hey, I also saw that this was tried over here, it didn't work. You look at technology today on the average farm's equipment. They are collecting that data whether we're utilizing it or not, whether it's planting, spraying, harvest, soil maps, Bill talked about it earlier, grid sampling. We have an influx of data flowing in, but we have a lack of data coming out, managed data. We can do a good job of picking all that up, but we're very focused. Farmers have to do this. Okay, we're farming, now we're harvesting, now we're on to running cattle in the winter. So that data gets put to the side and then it never gets picked back up. So us as a service provider, we're helping facilitate that role. Hey, let us know when you're done, we'll come by, we'll pick up that data, we'll upload it to various cloud server based platforms, and we'll review it in the winter. And just, you got to be very instructional and very driven about focused, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is this is what we need to do, and we will circle back around and have the topic. That's how you learn too.
When it comes to machine data, one of the things that for us is extremely important is obviously connected services. So connect to My John Deere, connect to FieldView. Make sure that if a farmer's already using a system, don't make them re-enter, right? There's APIs, there's connections that are out there. Let's not make it more complicated than it should be. The second thing, and again, the industry thinks this is very simple, but one of the most important things that needs to happen is that growers need to put the information in their monitor. So it's really difficult to evaluate product performance if you don't know where the products are. So having someone they can talk to, having those providers is really important. In addition to machine data and the cleaning and understanding product performance, that is one of the things that is imperative to our business. But the second thing is being able to get that farmer perception throughout the process. Because I've seen a lot of times where a product does perform, but if the product clogs the injectors, if it doesn't ship, if it doesn't handle all of those farmer perception things, yeah, you may have got X bushels per acre, but farmers are not going to adopt it. So that's one of the things that we've also done has been those boots on the ground, getting those farmer touch points, that understanding that farmer journey throughout the entire cycle to say, will this product actually perform? It's not just performance. You got to make sure that you're listening to that farmer throughout the entire life cycle.
Technology today on our equipment, whether it be a planter, a combine, a production tractor, there's so much technology available, and there's a gap between producers that didn't have that technology prior, whenever they started or were producing, and the producers that are out there now are the ones that are succeeding up and coming up in the world that want that technology because they're used to it. One of the things, we had an interesting discussion with a customer the other day, and we were talking about the evolution of agriculture. He started in the 50s. He said, the first thing that I remember doing is getting rid of horses and bringing tractors in on our production. He said it was the biggest thing in the world. My dad said, well, I don't know why you need tractors. We've done it with horses for years. There's no reason. He said, we're at the same spot. We were talking about EVs and batteries, drones, technology. The producers that produced with a tractor that you got on, you hooked a planter to, you went out and planted a crop, and then you got in a combine, and it was the same unit for everybody. Didn't matter if it was red, green, blue, whatever. The tractor and the planter was pretty similar, the way they worked. Now we have all the technology, so we're going from that horse to a tractor, from a tractor to an EV, or a tractor to a battery, where the new producers have to adapt to that, and I think are ready for it. The biggest deal on ROI is you've got to build a relationship with your customer, so you know their production or their business form, because everyone's different. You can go to, just like they said, you got small farmers that work off of a certain parameter and what they want to get out of the day, and then you have what we call pro farmers or corporate farmers that are all worried about investment and return. So I think the ROI really is sitting down and understanding what that business form looks like, or business model looks like for each one you're talking to. So when we're talking about a new tractor, a 1,000-acre producer may not want a tractor that has mapping or has the ability to auto steer, because the expense is too much and they just don't get the return for the size of the deal or their property. Whereas you get to a guy that's farming 10,000 acres, he wants the biggest and best thing that he can get across that ground as quick as he can, because there's only a limited space of time to plant, harvest, and put it in the bin. Or with cattle producers the same way. So I think that relationship building is key to understanding what you present them for return on investment for their particular production.
I would just say, from a return on investment, what we've seen from farmers and companies that do projects with farmers is, one, being able to collect the data. Number two is it's got to be quality data. When information comes in, whether it's from the monitor all the way to the cleaning algorithms that are going to take out the edge rows, making sure that is understood. But then what happens is that you get the companies, the innovators, and the farmers looking at the same data set, and they're all attacking the same problem. And I've never heard farmers say, I don't want to pay for products. What farmers have said, I'll pay for the product, but I got to know that it works. And as long as we are using data and putting it in a spot where there is the ability to make a decision on return on investment, and getting the farmer and the company looking at the same data set is how that is achieved.
It's not only is knowing your customer and their operation, but is it a generational thing? These older guys that are nearing retirement, in their twilight years of their career, they're not so they didn't grow up with technology. You get into guys in their 40s or producers in their 40s, not just guys, but producers in their 40s and into their 30s and younger. They've been involved with technology since grade school, so they're more comfortable with it. They grew up with it. They've just handled it day in and day out, so they're more willing to start running before they walk with technology. So as from an ROI standpoint, it's quick to market. So how fast can a new company introduce a product and get it to market? Well, data is the driver behind that. The more data points we can get out, the faster we can collect it, the faster it's going to get to market, the faster the producer can see it's got an ROI for them.
So reputation obviously is, for us as providers, is huge. We've got to have a reputation that we're consistent. We actually have been really focusing in our dealership of taking care of our customer, but who's the next customer that's going to be farming that or producing that, using that land, as it transitions from the person that is second generation to the third. It's usually pretty easy to see who that person's going to be coming up, and you can get to know them and build a relationship with them and understand if that person doesn't have a succession plan in place and that 1,000 acres comes up, who's going to be farming it? And so to your point, the producers are getting limited in the amount of people that are actually out there producing product. So we've got to get in front of those and try and get them into our circle of trust. And the more we can see, the more we can prove. Word of mouth is the biggest for me. If I can treat your neighbor right, and he has a little problem with the dealership down the road, maybe he comes talks to me, and we just start building from there. So a lot of it is reputation. Is how we go about it.
Our first 25 farmers were friends of mine, friends that I'd gone to college with or gone through AFA with, and this is the late 90s. And that 25 were people that we knew and trusted, and they thought this is kind of crazy, but we'll go along. But you guys are all marketers, I'm sure, built CRMs and manage CRM systems. What do you think is the most important, if you could have one field, we have a different idea, I think. What's the most important field in a CRM? Search? Well, okay. So I always give this, I didn't realize we put referral in there. And so there's this network effect. And I can go back, and it's only 8 years, but I can see, okay, we brought Joel in, 7 years ago. And then Joel referred this person. And in order for us to scale and grow, it has been this word of mouth. And as an entrepreneur, I always thought that I could talk to enough farmers and keep building that relationship. You can't. So then you hire more people, and then you have those relationships. But then the scaling effect happens where you bring this person on, you have this employee that brings on these 3 farmers. And then when farmers start talking to other farmers about the service that you provide, about the data that you provide, that's where the network effect happens. And so for marketers, I always kind of give that, because we get so hung up on get their email and get their cell phone number, and then we'll text them to death. And it's like, well, maybe if we provide value and we know what that decision tree looks like and what that spider web of relationship, how that works, that's how we've been able to kind of systematize it, just a way that we've approached it.
I think it's AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming down, and it's blown up in the last 3 or 4 months. It's only going to continue to help, the decision-making processes. We're working with some tools and some companies that are integrating AI into, management decisions. Do we need to spray for a fungicide yet? Instead of going out and looking at every single field, we can use those tools to narrow down that list of fields. Say, hey, these are a core list of fields, and the rest of these fields we can push off to next week. And I think that's only going to continue to grow as more. It's a snowball effect. As more data comes in, it's just it builds upon itself. It's just going to get quicker and quicker. So I really think AI is going to be the next big takeaway out of ag.
being a data company and a technology organization, we absolutely believe in that. We also believe in building that quality data set. But I would also encourage us, I think about this, in my 20-year career, and looking at this, I think that sometimes, I said this at the beginning, we think that it's going to go faster, and we think that products are going to be adopted, and we think that change is going to come quicker than it does. And in agriculture, because of our life cycle, because of the way that we operate, it does take longer than we'd expect. And I think that there's this idea of what's the magic bullet. Well, I've heard one is if we can make it rain in Kansas, we might be onto something there.
Right.
But we get really passionate. Like, I go develop a sensor and oh my gosh, I've got this sensor that does this and it solves for NPK. It does, it solves a problem, but how big is the problem, and is that everyone's problem? And I think that as an industry, we need to look at what is the long run of this and how do these start to connect together, because they do solve problems. We talked about that. There's problems that they solve. How big is the problem, and is it an integrated solution? Because farmers can't bring all of these innovations at the same time to the farm. Biologicals, when we hear from farmers, I think that the trend 5 or 10 years ago was that it came in, a lot of promises, but I don't know if the data necessarily support it. So I think one is seeing a lot of movement in the biological space. Number two, I'm obviously biased in this, but I think that product innovation can happen faster now. It used to have to, sit on the bench, then it would go to CROs and small plots, then it would, ultimately get to the farm. And the reason that our business exists and being able to get it on farm faster and being able to innovate and cut those cycles out, I think is one of the things that we're definitely seeing in the biological and other product space in ag.
I think inputs are going to change. This biological realm's coming on. There's something to it. It's still in its infancy and trying to get that worked out and try to figure out how it fits and how it plays on a wide scale. It's easy to do right now, but it's, like we were talking earlier, it is, well, you got to keep it cool. You got to keep it in a freezer. You can't, it's got a shelf life. That's not easy on 10,000 acres. Guy's not going to mess with it. So I think it's going to evolve. I think it's going to evolve really quick. So I think the biological realm's going to come on. Technology's not going to go away. It's going to increase. So how do we maintain a focus on and be a front runner of, technology, data management? That's kind of where our direction's focused.
The technology that's available to customize your application for your particular operation, field condition, the mapping and customizing that, even going across the field on how you put down your fertilizer, as much as even treating the seed when it goes in the ground to maximize that output or that result from your input costs, instead of mass spreading everything. Now we're micro tuning everything down to a specific amount for each product that you've got, whether it's cows with doing prescripts, whether it's planting, whether it's fertilizer, making sure every seed is set at the exact same depth and the exact same width so that we know where our population's accurate and we know what we can do. And in seeing that going across the field, to know what you put in the ground gave you that return. And I think that's the huge part, is that it's dialing it down and those inputs down to knowing exactly what it's going to take to produce a 250 bushel corn crop or cows for the next year.
My dad reminds me all this time. One is, I've been off the farm now for 25, 30 years. I'm not a farmer anymore. He's like, you don't know what it's like every single day. But what I tell companies, what I tell myself, what we tell our team is, we got to listen. If you're not in the field, if you're not doing the work, if you're not farming, your opinion doesn't really count. We got to listen to them. And I think that a lot of us, if we grew up in production ag, we think that we can speak for the farmer. And if you're not doing the work, you're not writing the check, you're not investing the time, then listen to the person that's doing that.
How many times have we thumbed through a farm publication and there's two guys standing out in the field looking at an iPad? We got to be relevant to what our audience, or there's an article about an Idaho potato farmer and it's a picture of a European combine cutting wheat.
Right.
And it's a total disengagement with the customer or with the reader at that point. We got to be relative to our audience, and we got to be very purposeful about what the article's about and who we're marketing to.
Right.
And that gives you credibility in the space.
Intent has dramatically evolved over the last 8 years. And so you started with people, process, technology. And a lot of times companies start with the technology piece first. So if I look at our evolution, in the beginning, we were doing pure consulting. We were using tools that were out there, and we were grabbing data, and we were running field trials. We moved from consulting into a small business, and we started to realize that we couldn't hire enough people like Zach that were talented to run around the entire United States and do this all manually. So we had to build a software platform for ourselves. And as we built that platform for ourselves, we made it more efficient. We said, well, now the next step is going from small business to offering a technology platform where multiple companies can use this. And so our business continues to evolve, and our scalability is now in the technology that we provide, where we can still be the boots on the ground running the managed trials and run the service piece of it. And I think that's what keeps us grounded. But also knowing that the technology that can be expanded to hundreds of companies out there, thousands of farmers, is where our company continues to grow and how we've scaled our business.
I had a talk with Matt before we got up here, and I said, we just purchased the dealership that I'm at currently, and the building that we're in was built in 1946. It was an original international building, so you can imagine it's very little been expanded to it. So I can't get a combine in my shop right now. So what we're focusing on is finding ways to service customers non-traditionally, whether it's with field service trucks, whether it's with Connect, where we can go on and see it before we have to go out there, any technology that we can use. But I think going forward, the main focus for an ag dealership is to embrace that technology that's coming and be prepared for it with either service techs or people that can answer questions. I have a shop full of guys that can tell you why your motor's making that sound or it won't go into third gear, but there's very few of them that can diagnose an electrical system and tell you why your control module won't shift the tractor like it's supposed to. So we're actually talking about putting in a static free room in our new building to be able to take modules apart, diagnose, and repair, where now we have to send those off or do a reman. So looking forward, we're just trying to get in front of what's coming and be prepared for it when it gets there, so we can have the resources in place to take care of those customers' needs. As producers' workforces get smaller too, so does ours. As people that wanted to work on equipment or work out with the ag department or ag field have kind of went away from it and went to technology, or because that's kind of what they grew up with instead of working on the farm. So finding people that want to work with equipment and work with ag producers is a lot of barriers that we're going to have to get by, is finding those bodies, just like what anybody else has to deal with.
If you go back to the Climate Corp acquisition, years ago, that brought a lot of momentum into the ag space. And over the last 12 to 18 months, that's slowed down dramatically. And so one of the questions that I have is looking at, we service multinationals, we service mid-tier organizations that have a 2 to 3 year R&D, and we service a lot of startups. Those startups looks a lot different now than it did 12 or 18 months ago. And thinking about, at what rate do these new products and new companies come online? It's one of the things that we're monitoring. I think that's happening kind of across the board, but the Ag Funder report now looks very different than it did 2 years ago.